The LOI Pod on Off the Ball. Catch live and exclusive national radio commentary of the Men's League of Ireland Premier Division on Off the Ball all season.
You're welcome along to the League of Ireland podcast. It's Nathan with you this afternoon. Vinny, Perth in studio. How are you?
I'm very good. Came to studio. Wi-Fi issues last week or two. Apologies. So I said, get across the traffic in Dublin, make an effort. While Gareth sits in his sitting room with the carpet on the walls again.
Neighbours' Wi-Fi.
You've been silenced there, Gareth. Go again.
Oh, am I silenced there?
You're back.
You're back. Yeah, I've got my own Wi-Fi. Unlike Vinny, he uses the neighbour's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Stephen Doyle's very upset you wouldn't come in to see him, but listen, I appreciate the effort that has been made. Tomorrow night on Off the Ball on OTB Sports Radio, so download the Off the Ball app if you want to hear full live commentary tomorrow night of the league leaders against the team level on points with the bottom side, which, as we all predicted, will be the league leaders Drogheda United against Shamrock Rovers, and that is coming from Sullivan and Lamb Park tomorrow night. We got Barry Murphy alongside Stephen Doyle on commentary, so download the Off the Ball app. The lads will be on air from 7:40 tomorrow evening. And Drogheda United 11 points, 2 points clear at the top. Kev Doherty, after the first week of the season, understandably Vinny was sort of going, everyone's written us off here, but we know what we're about, we know how to get it done. Sometimes they leave it a little bit later in the season before they figure things out. I think everybody's question was about where the goals would come from, with Franz Piero leaving the club and Douglas James Taylor picking up an injury at the start of the season. What are they getting right that they've been able to go through the first 5 games unbeaten?
I think it's a mixture of when they've had to dig in, they've dug in, and they've had a sort of back five at times has done really well. They've got a little bit of pace. I think I mentioned it last week. Someone like Conor Kane goes under the radar. He's very, really good player. Gives you that little sort of tenacity from wing back. Look, I still think, and Kev has made reference to people sort of writing them off, and it seems to be driving them mad a little bit. So I might do them a favour and say I still think they'll be, they'll struggle as the season goes on. It wouldn't shock me if Drogheda lost 2 or 3 games in a row over the next couple of weeks and drifted down the table. But what they have to do is, first and foremost, and Kev will think this, no matter what he says, is get as many points on the board as you can, as quickly as you can, about staying in the league. And I still say, if Drogheda are 9th, 8th, 7th, it's been okay for them. They've gone full time, and it will take time to build. They don't have the finances some other clubs. So himself and I think it's important. Sometimes you mentioned the assistant Darragh Doyle. The two of them have done really well. They've galvanised the team. There is that. I had a bit of fear about them going full time, because that thing of the lads jumping into cars together, rushing from training. I was part of a team that done that for a few years, and there is a sort of camaraderie about that. And I was worried, would they lose that? But they've started the season so well that ultimately it goes back to the manager, the staff. They've got them all together, and so many players are playing above their levels at the moment, which is great for them.
That line that they could lose 2 or 3 games in a row, Gareth, it feels like we could say that about any team right now, because again, just that mad inconsistency that we saw for so long of last season has continued in the same pattern at the start of this season. And for Drogheda to go to Talca Park last week, look, the goal from Warren Davis it's going to be, we've got some contenders already for goal of the season, and that one is right up there. To go to the home of the champions and play like they did, what are you seeing in terms of what Kev Doherty is doing with this squad?
Yeah, it's just more of the same, only a little bit more. I think the full-time approach, usually it takes you a yearly transition into that, because everything's changed. Your whole cycle's changed, your patterns changed, your sleep pattern when you train, when you do different things, when you eat. But they've just gone to it like taken to it like the ducty water. Now, Warren Davis is a perfect example of it. Even the way the goal came about, the aggression, the confidence to take the shot from there. I mean, it's just everything you need to see now at Drogheda. And people were saying, especially after the Pats match, when it was a brilliant defensive performance, but then they've kind of evolved a little bit more as well. They've actually got better at going forward and they're starting to create more chances. They're always going to be defensively sound and well set up. Darragh Doyle and Kev will always have them like that, and that'll stand to them in Europe. But now they're starting to be a bit more adventurous and gain a bit more confidence. And I agree with you in what you're saying there. I don't see them going 2, 3, 4 matches without a win because they're that steely. And we saw last year the two teams that didn't lose that many games did so well throughout the year was Galway and Shelbourne, and they finished really high up the table. Now, are Drogheda going to go and finish in the top 3 and 4? I think it's going to be really difficult. But I don't see them struggle in the way most people thought they would struggle at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, but Davis might be a good example of somebody that is actually flourishing in the full-time setup. Because he wasn't this star last year, and he's done really well for them. So there is people where, and I think there's a little bit of hybrid. A couple of players are obviously still holding on to a bit of work, I would imagine, which is fair enough. I think that's still part of the psyche of League of Ireland players in terms of, while a lot of them are doing very well financially now, I still think you need to have something. It's not what it once was, but yeah, look.
And the job that Kevin Doherty's doing, having won the Cup last year, having been so convincing then in the relegation playoff as well, and now starting the season like this, fair to say that when the first manager goes, he's going to be red hot favourite, particularly if it's one of the Dublin clubs.
You would say so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the form of what he's done and how he's done it will make him, like as you said, red hot favourite. The challenge will be for certain clubs, depending on who they are. Like, it can be harder to manage a team with more more expected of you. That will be his challenge, but he deservedly should be favoured for the next job that comes up as a result of what he's done.
And what I like about Kevin is Nathan is, remember there was links to the Cork job, and he kind of turned it down because it wasn't was full time. I mean, to me, that was a perfect job, the perfect club for someone like him. But he's very, very attached to Drogheda, so it's not going to be a case of one manager gets sacked and Kevin goes straight in. He's a smart fella. He will look at everything within the club, the support structures, and make the squad, and make sure it's the right move. He's got that kind of ability now to go and do that. It's not just a case of one manager out, let's just get Kevin on.
I spoke to Kevin on the pitch after the playoff game, and I said to him, it was after that game, and then they obviously played the President's Cup as well, but after that playoff game, and he just won the Cup the week before, and what I said to him was almost like a big brother type of way, and I wouldn't know Kevin overly well other than matching him, but what I said to him was, now you've got a target on your back, you've won a cup, your players have a target on your back, you're no longer a little old Drogheda doing well, and be prepared for that, and be prepared for a certain amount of criticism because you're expected to repeat what you did last year. And to be fair to them, they've done all of that stuff so far, and they've taken on them. They headed to Europe, because of the result of what they've done in the Cup, and they've started the season in such a good manner that you have to take your hat off to the job that Kevin has done, and obviously some of his players have stepped up to. The one thing they do get right most of the time is the recruitment is very, very good in that club. And that's Kevin's ultimate job at the moment. I don't think they have director of football there any way, shape or form. So Kevin that lands at Kevin's door. So you must give him all the credit for that.
We were at the league leaders last Friday night as well, which was Waterford at the time against Bohemians, and two managers going up against their former clubs. A few question marks already about Alan Reynolds at the start of the season after a inconsistent period for Bohemians, and they go down there, and by half time it's 3-0. One thing I would say for our commentaries and off the ball, you don't need to tune in for the second half. We haven't had a second half goal all season. Every single goal, every game has been done by half time. So Colm Whelan gets a hat-trick inside the first half, a couple of them penalties. 24, he's a player we've spoken about so often over the last few years, and the word that would come up always, if you can get Colm Whelan fit and scoring goals, we spoke about it so often with Derry, if they could get him fit, and they just couldn't keep him fit for long enough, and he's just been dogged by just horrible injuries for the last couple of years, and we're in that position again at 24. If Bowes can get a full season out of this guy, well, suddenly it changes things completely. Forget about Lys Mousset. This is the guy that's going to move them up the table.
Yeah, Gareth, you seen him up close, didn't you, last year? Like, how would you describe him as in terms of what's the centre forward style that you would see?
You know who I liken him to is Keena. I think he's very like Keena. And if you watch the first goal against Waterford, that's all you need to know about him. He gets a ball, turnover, he holds a defender off, and it's outside the box. And the only thing he thinks about is the connection on the ball. He hits the ball like a rocket. And if you look at his goals, and even the ones that he scored against Derry, listen, he only played a game and a half, 2 games max for Derry in 2 years. But both games you saw just glimpses of pure class. There was one goal down in Cork, and I looked at it after and I went, geez, the keeper's done poorly there. Then you watch it back and you go, but every goal that he scores is like that. And it can't be all the goalkeeper's fault. Even the one we were actually talking about McGlynn last week, or the week before, about how well he's doing for Waterford at such a young age. He doesn't even get near. He doesn't even get down to it. It's in the back of the net before, and it's in his near post. But honestly, his ability to use his body again, it comes from his GAA background and his physical, his enjoyment of taking contact, and then he can also net it as well. We're talking about Muse. I'm telling you now, you keep this boy fit, he will be the best signing for Bohs, and it's the link that they have been missing. That centre forward, not only Bohs, Derry were missing that link and have been missing that link and are still missing that link. Somebody that can come short, net it up, get into the box and get goals with a real goal threat. He's that good.
And what's interesting is, I think that's the nail on the head. That's I asked Gareth that for a reason. I seen him, most of football I would have seen him play is I used to go to UCD a lot, because you're always looking for the next star. So again, UCD have done a great job, but he can link up the play because of the philosophy he's learned there. And Gareth's explaining what Keena has, what he has is, you can sometimes question the keeper. It's almost like the two of them don't have a big backlift, so just fire the ball off and it's past the keeper very quickly. And Whelan, what Bohs have to do is give him a dig out. Okay, so I don't see him playing 35 games a season. I'd like to see him, and they're under a little bit of pressure to get results like everyone, but I'd like to see him in a couple of weeks' time coming out for a week or sitting on the bench, because he has had such a bad injury that coming back from cruciate, you don't want the big weight in the shoulders, and by sort of naturally he'll end up becoming 20 odd goals a season man for them, but you just have to be careful with him in terms of his injury. But that's a real fine for them. Surprised a couple other teams didn't go after him. I know there would have been a bit of nervousness and there's a risk to it, but there is a couple of teams that could have took a chance on him, I feel.
Funny, he played the last 90 minutes, the last away game, the Pats last year, and he was brilliant, really, really good. He rattled a crossbar, nearly broke it, and I thought at that stage the rumours was he was going to go to Pats. But listen, if he can stay fit, and Muse's a perfect compliment to him as well, because he'll come in and show signs of it. I don't think they would play well together, but he will get that rest.
Yeah, Lise Muse didn't even come off the bench last week, so we'll see what develops with that over the next little while. I guess as well, one of the criticisms of Bohs over the last few weeks has been around Ross Tierney, who started on the bench last week, and Dawson Devoy, and them not stepping up to another level, which they would need to do this season if Bohs to achieve anything. Actually, having somebody like Whelan up top might change their season as well. Yeah,
and vice versa. I mean, like the Dawson Devoy that we know, the Ross Tierney that we know, will make also, they can, particularly Devoy can sit and make a team tick, but they make penetrating runs as well, which punches holes in defence, and centre halves have to go and track it, Devoy into the box, and all of a sudden breaks for Whelan, the edge of a box. That type of stuff, they'll both suit each other. But look, I think Bohs have to find the right combination. There's no doubt they have a lot of really good players. They've got a lot of strength and depth in their squad. They've made a couple of changes last week and they've paid off. Be interesting to see their team selection this week. You know, do they stick with what worked last week, or do they say we've got some really good players on the bench and we freshen it up? So I think their team selection will be sort of interesting. I think some people didn't take the full context of what I said last week.
Oh, here we go. He's been getting a bit of stick.
No. What I'm saying is, I didn't get any stick over this one. It's okay. But the full context is, Bohs are spending enough. They're a big enough club, and I think they've got the players to be a top 4-3 side. And if you rewind back to 12 months ago, the start of the season, the Shelbourne squad that started the season last year is not as good as the Bohemian squad that's starting now. Now, Shell's players have kicked on, So that's the challenge for not just the manager. That's easy to blame the manager. For the whole group to go, we've got to go and become a top 3 or 4.
It's easy to blame the manager, but the difference between the Bow squad now and the Shell squad last year is that Damien Duff is the Shell's manager.
No, I accept that, and that's why I always said I think Duffer brought players onto the next level, and that's the challenge for Reynolds and his staff. But also, we've got some top players in that Bow's dressing room who have to take responsibility as well. So there's a mixture of all of them things. That club deserves, I would say, and probably should be, in terms of what they're doing, in them European spots at the end of the season.
I think the biggest frustration for Bows fans is they've always been spending they've always had the same sort of budget for years, and the club has always been increasing revenues. They've been getting the off the field stuff right, but now this is the year that they've really gone and competed for a few 3 or 4 players in and around the good salaries that we know that they're getting now, and they've got them. So to not then automatically be challenging for top 2 or 3, it's tough to take, but and the manager's always going to get the blame. You know what I mean?
If you're a Balls fan, Gareth, and you go to Dalymount every week, you need to see them win as well. So this can't be a false dawn. They've got to build on this, and that's the challenge. They don't win enough games in Dalymount Park. Like, you can scrap for tickets all you want and buy season tickets, but you want to see your team win. You know, and they don't do enough of that.
Bulls are away to Pats tomorrow night. Good news, Gareth. Vinny's on co-coms tomorrow night, so we can do a little lottery here in advance to get the man of the match, and Vinny will just pick a name out now, and that's who we'll give it to. What happens during the 90 minutes is irrelevant.
Can I just say, the amount of players who are reaching out over this...
Talk us through. So Danny Grant got man of the match last week. Danny Grant scored a brilliant goal to win the game. He is the man who decides the tie.
I would say, to be fair, Danny Grant...
The Rovers supporters sitting around me might have been a bit surprised by the decision.
That was the moment of the match, to be fair.
Oh, well, I don't think they call it the moment of the match.
No, but... you had to go off this during the week, and I said to you, who would you make man of the match? And your answer was...
Ed McGinty, I think I'd probably give it to.
Yeah, so you didn't really have an answer, and I'm not giving goalkeeper man of the match. What I will say is it was a huge moment, and potentially a huge moment in his career at Shamrock Rovers. He needed that, and if you had been listening to the commentary, the one thing I did say is he needed now to use this as a springboard. Big moment, picks up the ball on the halfway line, poor from Pats. We get onto that later on, but it's a big moment for him. It was a big moment for Shamrock Rovers as well. I know the league is tight, but they needed a win. But the one thing I will say about this Rovers group is the standout players last week was McGinty, was Josh Honan, and Healy was exceptional in midfield. So the new players into the group are the ones that seem to be driving the squad on. And they need 1 or 2 more of them, you would feel. It feels is still a little bit, I don't want to say sluggish, it feels like there's a bit of lack of intensity in their attacking play still. But, I mean, that game could have went anyway. Stephen Kenny keeps talking about fine margins all season. It could have went either way.
Well, Mason Belia has that header under the crossbar that you expect him to score. Go on, Gareth.
Yeah, I'm just what Vinny's saying there is interesting about them clicking. I think there's a load of teams like that. If you watch Bows now, and if you watch Pats, even I was at Richmond Park last Monday night when they beat Derry 2-0. There's not many teams playing really well. Not the way Pats were playing at the end of last season. Not the way the Shells were playing at the peak, or Shamrock Rovers at the peak. There just is not many teams that are just firing on all cylinders going forward. So it'll be interesting to see who A hits that kind of form first, and then B, how long they can sustain it, because there seems to be a lot of emphasis on stopping the opposition from each team.
Well, is that down to, it's Cheltenham week, so think about Cheltenham, is that down to some of that about the going? As in the top of the pitch
don't suit.
Like the top of the pitch suits certain teams. Yeah, no, and I know some people. No, but what I mean by that is, Gareth, right? Think about your 2 wingers. Your 2 wingers are Pats, like fast pitches, quick play. Pitches are a little bit slower now. You consider Drogheda they would suited by a little bit of heavier pitches and different things. Galway, who've had a good start. It's just interesting. I'm not saying that's an excuse. Tallaght Stadium was a little bit heavy, but it was still a decent pitch. And Pats played good football.
Compared to the pitches we used to play on, you look at Tallaght and you look at Richmond Park, you can play snooker on them.
It's a different game than what we played on than it is now. There's a lot more control in the game. There's a lot more pass with purpose, they would say, or different bits and pieces. So the game has changed. I think it's worth making the point that the pitches now are changing how certain teams play a little bit. They're finding it a little bit more difficult, and I think the top of the ground will suit a St. Pat's, for example. A great example. Better pitches around the country, not just in Tala, but if Rovers go to United Park or whatever the new name is now, that pitch will be exceptional in the summer when you go for the second game, and they'll pass the ball around. It might be a little bit heavier this week, and he might have to adapt the way they're playing. You see a lot more teams playing with two up front at the moment.
And I'm more questioning the quality that each team has at the front end of the pitch. I mean, it's never been better for the league. Whether players are coming back from England, coming up through the academies, there's so much excitement and players going forward and abilities that I would just love to see more goals. More even shots on target. Like, they're way, way, way down compared to what they used to be.
Oh, don't get me started. But that's down to coaching. Pass. To be fair, Pat's put a lot of ball in the box the other night, and some of the quality was.
I was going to say not a lot of good ball into the box.
Not a lot of good ball.
Probably one of the big disappointments for Pat so far has been Elbazetti and Mulroney on the wing. Is that just down to maybe pitches, personal form, or do you think teams have looked at Pats from last season, opposition coaches, and realised if you can get at those two, don't give them as much time, you're taking away a huge amount of the creativity?
I think it's a combination of all that, and a lot of teams playing with two up front mean they're probably playing with a back three. So by playing with two up front, Shells will go effectively a 4-4-2, but some of the, like Galway, Drogheda, are playing with three at the back. They've played both of them teams, so therefore it's a blanket five when Pats have good possession. So the space is a little limited, and when you play that way, you'll sacrifice both Pat's fullbacks having a bit of the ball, and you'll go really tight to the two wingers with your opposition wingbacks. So there is an element to that, but again, so it's all of them things: top of the pitch, form.
Yeah. What about the top two for them? So Melia and Keena and their partnership. So you can't drop Keena. Even though
Keena's the best player in the league at the moment.
Right.
If we were giving out Player of the Year now, Keena would be the best player in the league.
The quality of goals he scored.
Not just the goals, but his general play.
But Mason Melia, and I asked Stephen Kenny this after that Derry game, he's sort of playing as a number 10 at the moment. Is that where his role is going to be this year? And he would say, well, he's more naturally a number 9. And again, maybe the talent is such, you have to get him in your team. But is that a partnership that, give it time, you can see it working? Or does Melia fit in as a number 10 in the way the Pats play?
They did flip it around a little bit in the second half, because Melia was poor the other day, and you don't like saying that about someone so young. He's put himself into the spotlight, so that's what happens when you do what he done. He's been remarkable. I think Mealy is best at leading the line. He wants to take contact. There's a bit of old school centre forward about him, and I think he's at his very, very best when he does that. But it's a little bit like we've seen this with so many young strikers. I think Keena's form is the best. He's been the best player in the league, as I said. I think the way he's led the line for Pats, I don't see Mealy being suited to that. He can evolve, and that partnership can evolve. But for that to work, Pats need to be playing not with Mealy as a 10. They need to be playing with two up front. The challenge they have is behind them in the midfield. They're a little bit weak. The loss of Jamie Lennon is crucial to that. But Mealy spins in behind people or gets his backside into centre halves. He's going to cause them problems. Too much the other night, he was playing in that sort of number 10 position. He gave the ball away a little bit too much for Pat's liking, or wasn't a real threat. So I would say it can't work, and if it is going to work, it needs a Jamie Lennon in there holding everything down, and it needs Forrester then feeding them.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder and all that, Gareth, and Jamie Lennon's reputation has skyrocketed over the last couple of weeks, because we were in Richmond Park 10 days ago, and even though Pats won the game, like Derry controlled possession in the first half an hour, and Pats didn't have anyone who could just get the boot in there and win it back. And then the last night, obviously Danny Grant's goal comes because he just runs straight through the middle. That the absence of Lennon, and while Bagley returned, there's nobody who can quite do the job that Lennon can do for Pats.
Yeah, it's a dying breed, Nathan. We've talked about it in the podcast before. That person, the O'Neills for the Deegans for Drogheda. These people they're not making them anymore, or they're not bringing them forward anymore into the first team. But yeah, Lennon, it's a huge miss. And even if you look at the centre midfield that played that day against Derry, was McClelland, who's not a natural centre midfield, and he's definitely not a sitting midfielder. And Forrester had only been back training 10 days. Derry just didn't take advantage of that that. They didn't run them into the ground. They were very, very comfortable. But in that night especially, it was Keane and Melia just kept looking at each other going, who's going to pick up the yellow sitting midfielder? And nobody was doing it. And he was just dictating the game. And had Derry been better in the final third, they might actually create chances, but they were absolutely woeful. And then when Pats turned over the ball, Melia and Keane just came alight. They were unbelievable. But if you're going to play the two of them up front, you need a Lennon midfield. But you need to probably go for a back three, and that's not a Stephen Kenny formation. So I think it'll be a case of one in, one out, and it'll protect Mealy as well because
Bagley's a very good player, Gareth. It's about like round holes and square pegs and all that stuff. It's about Bagley needs to play nearly in a tree in midfield the old way, but he's a really good footballer. But then they were just a little bit light there, and you spoke about the goal and how easy it is. And I go back to your point about talking about, say, Lennon is getting, because he's out of the team, all of a sudden people are talking. But he's a little bit like Chris Shields. If Lennon was playing a league-winning team, yes, he wouldn't be the best player, but he'd nearly be the first. He just holds everything down for you, and it's so crucial to play that way in the modern game. So I think he's always been highly regarded by a lot of managers in the league, and Stephen done well to hold on to him. There's a lot of talk from him going to the States.
You also looked, Vinny, at last year, Mark Coyle, how valuable he was for Shells. I mean, they got Mark from Fun Harps, and he was always a good player, but they brought him to another level, and he was the pivot at the bottom midfield that allowed defensively to be so sound, but also to start attacks. I mean, it's a dying breed.
The thing for Mason Mealy is it's actually brilliant for his career that he's getting to play in a slightly different role, and he's going to learn a lot. You just think back to the game at the end of Tala at the end of last season, and the pressure he put on Pico Lopez by being right up on him, and this time, as you say, he's having to drop a little bit deeper. He's picking up the ball in slightly unusual positions and not quite as close to the opposition goal as you'd want. Well,
the best part of this is he's not playing academy football in England at the moment. Okay, so he's not ghosting around scoring 2 or 3 goals. He's not playing in that one position. He said playing for a really strong side. What he's doing is he's playing men's football. He's being challenged. He's being questioned. He's probably watched the game back and he's probably gone, who is that Vinny Perth fella waffling on about my position, for argument's sake? But that's the spotlight. That's the spotlight. Because he's done so well, he's put the spotlight on himself. It's harsh, but that's big boy football. So he's learned. He will probably be a little bit nervous this week. He will probably go, oh, I didn't play well last week. He'll question himself a little bit, and that's all part of the learning. And would it shock you if Mealy scored twice this week? Not at all, not in the slightest. And I hope he does. I think it'd be great to see him bounce back and be part of his next step of development, instead of playing for Spurs against a team like, I don't know, Crawley Town in a under 21s match and scoring 2 and thinking everything is great. He's learning the hard way, and it's brilliant as part of his development. And yes, it'd be great if he was working in a full-time setup. And I think I'd rather a 16, 17-year-old in the UK by and large, but this is great for his development, and it's part of his learning. It's okay. And he will have some stinkers between now and when he does go away.
Ramal Palmer's out for the foreseeable. He's had surgery on a hamstring injury, but Sean Hoare is back in the Pats squad. It'll be interesting to see where he fits in to that Pats defence. Complete sellout at Richmond Park tomorrow night for
just touch on Sean Hoare real quickly, and I think I've mentioned a couple of times he will score set pieces if he gets into the team. I think he's trained very hard.
Where does he get into that team?
Well, that's the challenge.
I put him in front of Gravosty all day, every day.
You mean you start him ahead of Grogowski?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, probably. That's harsh because Grogowski's done really well, and he was a key figure in the run they went on the back end of last year, Gareth, to be fair. When he came back away to Drogheda, they were exceptional. It's no slight on him. I just think the way St. Pat's want to play, high up the pitch, high pressing, his pace, we talked about it in the podcast before. See, if you get a centre half with pace, it allows you to play 10, 15 yards higher up the pitch. And it's an amazing leap as well. Yeah, you're right.
Amazing. Yeah. And not only that, and we'll touch on it later, see the amount of goals that have been scored in set pieces in the league at the minute. It's unbelievable. It's literally deciding games.
That lad in Arsenal has a lot to answer for. Pats are doing that corner now, for Jesus' sake.
Stop.
I want to talk about a couple of your former players, Vinny. They could have won it all and all that, Gareth, back in the day.
We did win it all.
They could have won it all.
We did win it.
Nearly.
We did win it all.
Nearly. Speaking of players' absence, Sean Ganon been out for Shells, and suddenly they're having a little bit of a rocky run of form. We were so impressed with them for the first couple of weeks of the season. As we said, it was going to be that tricky period of 3 games in the space of a week. Ganon's absence, though, and them not really having somebody who's that natural fit and right back, has that been a factor in it?
I'd say, I think the world of Sean. So I'm not going to say anything in any way, shape, disrespectful, but I don't think the Ganon missing as a person, because he's not that Terry Butcher style leader. He just does what he does. He's 8, 9, 10 out 10 every week. He wouldn't fall below that. So I think it's more that natural fullback who. Because the way they're playing now, they're trying to get that rifle a little bit higher up the pitch, and not having the natural fit in there is probably part of the problem. And look, they're also champions. That's what comes with it. People. There's a target and there's an X on your back, and that they have to deal with that. I still think they will deal with it by and large throughout the season. But the two up front, it's too early. Will there be a debate? Have Shells come away from what they were brilliant at last year? That sort of 4 straight in 3 in midfield, 3 up front, and by changing to the 4-4-2, that stuff are evolving, great. But will we be questioning that in 7-8 weeks' time? I don't know. I think it's great that you have 2 options. And will he feel? It'd be interesting to see, does he leave one of the front men now in the next week or two and go back to his way of playing? That's one to watch. I don't know the answer to that, but we have to watch it.
They're at home against Cork tomorrow night, 7:45 kickoff.
You would feel that's a 2 up front, sorry Nathan, and that's where you would feel. But you're going to play against a low block against Cork, you'd imagine.
But I think he's struggling to get Chapman in the team with the 2 up front. I think that's where the biggest dilemma. You can hear him talking about Chapman. He's almost he's giddy about getting him into the team, how classy a player he is. So I think he's going to have to work around that and get a solution. But I mean, what a game to bring him in, playing the 2 up front and Chapman in behind against Cork. It would be nice.
I'll tell you what, they're already lighting the pitchforks in Sligo ahead of Saturday night and the arrival of McGlynn. Sligo against Derry Saturday evening.
In fairness, he spent the last few months trying to butter them up. To be fair,
he must have known this weekend
he's
was
gone
coming.
Up there, going into the press box looking for a little cup of tea, little ham, cheese sambo.
Dykesy's going to have to be my bodyguard on Saturday night.
Oh, you have a decent bodyguard, to be fair.
If it wasn't for Michael Duffy, there wouldn't be much to shout about at Derry right now.
I tell you what, if he was to get injured or suspended, we would be in massive trouble. He's obviously in. Vinny will know this. Whenever he's training or pre-season, he's always the fittest. He's always getting the highest numbers. He's a machine. But I was worried the other night now, and we all know that Tiernan wants to go to a back 3. He did it against Pats, if you remember, Nathan, and they looked very comfortable. Now, Pats were 2-0 up at the time and didn't, but until Power come on, didn't cause them much problems. But he went for 3 at the back, and I always think Duffy is an out-and-out winger, and I think that Thomas is as well on the right. But he actually played really well the other night against Galway. He was brilliant in the first 40 minutes. They created a load of chances, should have scored a couple of goals. Galway went and got a Galway goal. Awful defending from Derry. But Duffy he's been a revelation. He's got, and again, we're talking about set pieces. Duffy free kick, Duffy penalty, and a Hoban penalty. 4 out of 4 goals in 5 games, and only 1 from open play. The one against Shells where Don Thomas get the cross under Duffy's head.
What's going on with Hoban? Because he looks fit. I know Pat. Not that he can put on weight. That sounds wrong, but he looks like really trim from the way when I look at Pat, took his obviously Penty really well, but there's not a smile on his face at the moment. Is there something going on there, or is it just it is what it is?
Well, obviously there was rumours that he wanted Tiernan had said to him that he wasn't part of his plans. Then obviously had he backtrack and he was supposed to be going to Galway or Rovers. That didn't pan out. But now that the window's over, I expect him to come back. He was like a man possessed against Waterford when he came on. I just need him. I would say Derry just need him playing. They need him playing games. Liam Boyce's a good player, very good player, but he's not going to get as many goals as Pat. So they need him in the team, and they need to start supplying him. I mean, only for Michael Duffy, there's not much supply coming from the wing backs or centre midfield at the minute.
Bit mad considering the investment that was made during the summer that Gavin White and Shane Ferguson are sitting on the bench for the entire game. Is that just Gavin White hadn't played for quite a while and they're trying to get him up to fitness? What's the story with the two of them?
Well, Gavin White, when he came to the club, was a massive gamble. He hadn't played football in a long time. He was going through some issues. He played against Waterford the full game. It was great to see him out there getting 90 minutes under his belt, and he needs that. He needs minutes. But then to see him turn out an inch of core after the performance he put in against Waterford was unbelievably surprising, considering that he was only coming back and they played 2 games in such a short period. Ferguson started well, same problem, hasn't played a lot of games in a long time. Ben Doherty has come in and is just far superior. He's way more aggressive. He's more of a threat going forward. You know what you're going to get, and you're going to get goals from Ben. We talk about the centre halves from Derry, the right back. You need to get goals from your defenders, and Ben gives you that. So I would imagine Ferguson's going to have a big fight to get into the team again, and White is going to have to get fit. And to be honest with you, there's not much competition in it for that 10 position.
Gareth, you know the way Nathan never leaves his Ivy Tower of Dublin? So he wouldn't know this, but so fill him in. What is the mood like of Derry fans? How long, do Derry fans accept?
When was the last time you were up in Derry?
Derry and Rovers back end of last season.
Sussing out the job at the end of last season. Sussing out the job when he heard Rory Higgins was under a bit of pressure. Typical. I'll do that game up in Derry. No problem.
Where is Derry? Genuinely, from
that's a big question.
I mean, there's so much. I mean, Nathan already poked that bear last week. I
know you've answered that, but I mean, I'm saying, what's expectations of supporters? At what stage do crowds drop? Do people get browned off? Do they turn on the players, the manager? Or are people at Derry okay if they're 5th this year or 6th comfortably or whatever?
I think anybody that has an understanding about football will understand that Derry aren't going to be in the top 3 or 4. I mean, just because of the pure overhaul. I mean, you're on about stands being empty. There's a stand opening now in the next 3 or 4 home games that's going to have capacity for another 2,000 fans. So they would need to start kind of ramping up their performances. But no, listen, Vinny, there's so many players have gone out, so many players come in. You've got ideas, you've got different regimes. It's completely changed. So to expect a different result than what's happening is just delusional. And if you look at it, away to Shells, away to Pats, 2 tough games. Home to Bows, 1-0, it's good 3 points. Waterford at home's a terrible defeat. Didn't play well, weren't at it. Galway, that performance was very good in the first 45 minutes. The 1-1 against Galway at home, that's no different to what has been happening over the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not making excuses. To me, it doesn't look great right now, but you got to give them time, and I hope the fans do too.
There's no point asking for predictions for any of these games because Christ knows based on what we've seen over the
league
first
does
month.
Make it, who's the favourites for the league today? Genuinely, I'd say my view is now Shamrock Rovers after the win the other day. But 2 weeks ago I was going, this Shelbourne team looked really good.
You keep talking and I'll find out.
All right.
Just chat briefly about Sligo because they've managed to start getting a few results. I see Conor Walsh, who's come in goal, is in the under-21 squad today. Jad Akiki's in that 21 squad and obviously lost so much talent. But Conor Malley was arguably the most in-demand player during the off-season and he's still there. Is this just actually things weren't as bad as we saw in the first couple of games, or what have you seen?
I don't know. Is to be honest with you, I think you're right to mention the goalkeeper. I think he's done really well at different stages, and we feared for them when obviously they lost their goalkeeper to Shamrock Rovers. I think, and not to sit in the fence, I think we've got to wait and see where Sligo are a little bit in terms of. Again, I spoke about Drogheda. If Sligo lost the next 2 or 3 games, I don't think it'd shock anybody. They have some decent enough players, but so does everyone else in the league at the moment. And it feels like to me they could do with a centre half and a centre forward badly to strengthen that team, to help them be secure staying in the league. And the problem with the whole league is I could look like a fool for making that suggestion when they end up 4th in the league in 10, 12, 13 weeks' time. But it doesn't feel like they've got the right strength and depth in their group at the moment.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Sligo, and it was the same last year, is conceding goals. They've already conceded 12 this season. I mean, that is a huge amount of goals. Now, the positive for Sligo is they've scored plenty as well. They've scored 8, and that's the highest. They've scored the most goals and conceded the most goals. So the big thing you're going to get down the showgrounds is goals. What do you see it being a 0-0 now on Saturday night?
Yeah, but Pinkenauer was a huge loss from wasn't he at the back?
Massive.
I think he was underrated a little bit.
Yeah.
Particularly being left-sided.
Yeah. And he and then McGlynn as well. Yeah. But even at that, if you look at the Hutchinson left back, I think is a fine player. Denham, they're relying on Gareth McElroy. He's only young, only played a few games. They're always going to concede goals. Can they outscore their opposition? That's very difficult to do against some of the defences that they're going to be coming up against.
Okay, so Gareth, go back to who's the favourites to win the league now?
To me, right now, the Shells and Pats are the two favourites for me. I couldn't separate them.
Oh, there's a man. There's a man who knows the minds of the bookies. You can't separate Pats and Shells at the top of the betting. Both 9-4, ever so slightly ahead of Shamrock Rovers at 5-2.
Wow.
Derry 4th favourites.
Oh my God! That's what price are they, Nathan?
17-2.
Well, it's a big price, but yeah, I mean, I suppose it goes after that, or
so Rovers beat Pats last week, and Pats are still considered favourites to win the league. Okay,
so yeah, I mean,
you haven't made a very, very strong case otherwise.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to make a big case for Rovers other than the expectancy, the quality that's in the dressing room. They've been there, done that, wore the t-shirt. They aren't overly impressive at the moment, but neither is anybody, to be fair. Interesting.
I think that's why it's so tight, Vinny. I mean, we talked about it. There's nobody blowing us away at the minute, and it's all about getting that rhythm. Once the first team, whether it's Pats, Bows, Shells, Rovers, whoever it is, if they put, like we've seen last year for Shells at the very beginning, 4 or 5 wins together, it'll be hard to catch them.
Yeah, if you're going to win a league title, though, you can put yourself in such a position over the next 5-6 weeks because of if Pats were to go and beat Bowls now and then bumped, or vice versa, Rovers now back that win up by going up to Drogheda and win, and all of a sudden 2-3 weeks in a row you're top of the league and you stay there because you expect to be there. So the next few weeks can be crucial even at this early stage.
Yeah, and obviously there's an international week coming up next week, so there's a break. So the fixtures then, our live game tomorrow night on the Off the Ball app on OTB Sports Radio's Drogheda United against Shamrock Rovers. It'll be Barry Murphy and Stephen Doyle on that. It's Galway United against Waterford, Shelbourne against Cork City, and St Patrick's Athletic against Bohemians. And then on Saturday, Sligo Rovers against Derry City. Of course, will we have a league, or what sort of league will we have to talk about over the next couple of years after the big story of the week from David Sneyd on the 42 that League of Ireland clubs are understood to be examining the process of breaking away from the FAI as a deepening rift between key stakeholders could lead to a reshaping of how the professional game is run in the country. The 42 of the story that after a meeting during the week of the National League Committee, which is the body that runs the League of Ireland, the clubs have sent a formal request to the FAI for all information presented to the government regarding the future of academy funding. Now, a lot has gone on this week. I think it's fair to say, a lot of anger, frustration, bewilderment from the Premier Clubs Alliance, the Premier Division clubs, around the new FAI plan to bring the best young talent, 250 of them between the ages of 14 and 17, into Abbottstown, basically at every available opportunity, school breaks, midterms, Easter holidays, summer holidays, all of that. And the clubs being completely blindsided by it. John Fallon had the story in the Examiner. A lot of the clubs saying that that's the first they had ever heard of this. And my understanding from chatting to people in the clubs over the last few days is that while a breakaway, for want of a better term, may not be imminent, that the feeling is that this academy plan and the way it was presented and the lack of detail and the mistrust that is there in the detail from the clubs, that it might well be the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of their relationship with the FAI. What are you hearing, Vinny?
A mixture of all of what you said. I think the frustration is not to be disrespectful to anybody working in the FEI, but some of the best coaches in this country are working at League of Ireland clubs. So, I mean, and while the contact time on paper sounds like a good idea, it's like 9 to 5. Well, you're not going to train. They're counting that as 8 hours. Small example, like you're not going to train for a full 8 hours. Even take lunch break means all of a sudden it's 7. So take that with a pinch of salt.
So that was part of the frustration from the clubs. That was people will have probably seen the letter that was leaked out, and it was quite vague unless you understood what was being spoken about. But I think one of their frustrations was that they felt that the FAI, when they were talking about the amount of contact hours that would come from this, were maybe overstating the amount of contact hours that would happen at Abbottstown and understating the amount that happened at some of the academies currently.
Yeah, and a lot of the FAI plans we've seen over the last couple of years, and look, I've been on record of being critical of them. Not that improving contact hours is a bad thing, and people have said, the politics in Irish football is blah blah blah. It's not politics for politics' sakes. It's people saying the level of detail they're getting. The presentations might be nice and shiny, but when you get into the detail and the question and the why and the how, there is no answers. We'll sort that out. We'll work on that. What do you do with the players after 5 o'clock from the country? We'll sort that out. We'll work that out. Okay, is there a budget to send them, say, to the pictures a couple of nights? We'll look at that, we sort it out. It doesn't feel like there's enough budget to do anything at the moment, so I would be concerned about giving them so many players. And also, well,
the budget's coming from the emerging talent program and the cutting of that, and some of that budget will go towards this.
But sure, that was effectively not a budget. That was staff when the FAI turned up and renting a pitch off, whether it was Dundalk or whether it was whatever. Look, Nathan, it is another example of the FEI with another shiny document that actually, when it was questioned, it wasn't good enough. And when the schoolboy clubs questioned their part of the thing across the whole country, people said Doherty or dinosaurs and this. It's not that we all want summer football. We all want more contact hours. We just want it done in the right manner. And there's two sides to this, and we don't have really long. I just want to make the point that I think it's important to make the point. People are sick and tired of the FEI. The people running the league are part of where this league has become successful. And I think that has to be stated as well. I think that's important. So
that's a very small department, though.
Yeah, no, and so, but I think it's important that it's stated. So I think we need, the league breaks away from the FEI, then I'd like to see a certain amount of checks and balances. So I think licence, for example, has been a good part of that. There's improvement on licensing that the PFAI have had a good input into that, and they've had checks and balances for players, so that's good, and that's managed by the FEI. So if a breakaway league comes away, I think there's certain sections of that have to be carried over, but the brand of the FEI and what they're doing is not good enough. And look, don't make it personal about Mark Hannon, but like, it's another presentation from his department that people have picked a huge amount of flaws in, and it comes a point where we have to go, enough's enough, lads. Like, I understand this is you're right, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, because
is there not an argument, though, that we had years and years and years in Irish football where nobody was coming with any plans,
but
and
that
now somebody has finally put together a player pathway plan, is coming to clubs, is again trying to make the best of a bad bunch here, where they haven't been able to get the academy funding. We're all talking about contact hours. They've been innovative. They've gone to the clubs and said, actually, we're going to try something different here.
Just because it was shite before, don't do something shite again.
Because there's ill feeling against Mark Hannon. People are saying no to everything.
It's not ill feeling against Mark Hannon at all. Like, to be honest with you, when he first arrived in the country, I met him 4 times in his first 5-6 days in the country. It's not ill feeling towards him in any way, shape or form. It has to be thought out. It has to be a process. They've been a little bit unlucky with the change of government, or not the change, but the election and the change of the minister. But the clubs are right to ask, where is the devil in the detail? They are right to ask what was proposed. It's about time we done that. It's about time these people sat in front of people and asked serious questions, not in-house interviews. So let's put all our cards on the table. If this is the best option, fine. But don't try and hoodwink people by saying we're going to be doing 40 hours of contact time over Easter. Okay, what's that made up of? 9 to 5, it's 40 hours. That's not 40 hours of contact time. So it's not. What's the level of coaching you're getting? Where like, what way are they going to be coached? Are they going to be coached to an international standard? So is it going to be the international team doing this? International football is different. Are you going to say to Shamrock Rovers, who are playing a game against Bowls at the weekend under 17, we're taking 7-8 year squad Monday to Friday, and then sure you play that match 12 o'clock on a Saturday.
I did wonder on that, and we've had a request in for a long time to get Mark Ganon on the show, that actually if there is that amount of coaching hours available within the FAI, could they approach the clubs and say, we have these coaches at I don't want to say at a loose end, but available on these hours where you want to add in time, we can share them around your clubs, would that work?
But the coaches aren't there. There's no way.
The coaches must be there if they were proposing bringing all these young players in.
It goes back to my original point, and there's a lot of really good coaches working at Shamrock Rovers, St. Pat's, Bowls, and they wouldn't want to change them. They're doing okay. They just want more.
I'm not saying change them. I'm saying add in some more coaching expertise.
But look, I think the bottom line is we've given the clubs, these League of Ireland clubs, we've given them. There is certain clubs who could do with a hand with this. Some of the clubs aren't as strong, but I don't know. I think you've got to give these clubs the funding they need to do the job themselves, because I think they're more than capable of doing it. I look at the easiest ones for me, because I'm based in Dublin. I look at what Rovers can offer. I look what Bowls can offer. I look what St. Pat's can offer. Shelbourne can offer in terms of facilities. If they had a ability to have a couple of full-time coaches, I think the contact hours would go through the roof in terms of holidays, in terms of summer. They would have players in 3-4 days a week. If they could feed them, we've seen some of the clubs have used an education route as well with the players. The clubs are ready to do this, to take it all back off them and send them into the FEI. Who the bottom line is, it's not the people running the League of Ireland section. It's the FEI brand that we're all a bit scared of at the moment, and we're not sure we've enough confidence in them, or they have the finance to do everything to the level that is required.
Well, let me bring you back, Gareth, to better days. And I was just doing a bit of research earlier on. I'll go back to 2006 when the FAI took over the running of the League of Ireland, and in a statement issued by the organisation and the FAI's chief executive, John Delaney, he said, "This is a momentous day for Irish football because it brings the senior game under the direct control of the FAI. We can now direct the resources of the FAI towards the senior game, and we look forward to the challenge ahead as we strive to improve all aspects of the league." I think it worked out exactly as he had planned, didn't it?
Sounds great, but this is the problem. That's all you're hearing from the FEA. If it's not sound bites, it's presentations. The FEA trying to get involved in the academies. The clubs have done incredibly well to get to this level. They have asked for specific help around the academies. They didn't ask for their players to be dispersed back to Dublin to a centralised location to get extra coaching. That's not what they asked. They asked for financial help and Mark Ganon and his team to get involved in helping them better their coaches. I don't understand why the FEA can't pour that money and their coaches into running around the country and helping them with the academies locally. You've got 3 tiers now, right? So all the League of Ireland clubs are finding it difficult to get the players off the junior clubs. And now you're going to add up a third layer where League of Ireland clubs are going to be saying, no, you're not going to Dublin for 4 or 5 nights on the holidays whenever I can put on the same sort of training or I can put on better training. That just does not make sense. And I don't know who thought this up and I don't know who presented it. But and then it becomes the trust thing that Vinny says. Once you don't trust a brand, you've got to keep it simple. You've got to start keeping it simple and opening up
Gareth,
all
you
lines.
Talk about Sligo for a second, because it's in the job Conor O'Grady's doing up in Sligo. Why would he want to give 6-7 players up to Dublin? Different people going into international setup, and they've got to learn it. It's international football underage. If you watch it, it's slightly different. But I'm not sure that's the best use of finances is sending 6 or 7 of Conor O'Grady's best players.
It does feel like that's when we were growing up. Like, I grew up in Mayo. My dad used to drive up on a Saturday to Belvedere with 4 lads in the back of the car because you couldn't make it down in the country and you'd have to get spotted up there.
But now
we sort of spent, some people would argue maybe it's still more of a struggle down the country, but everything since then has been working towards spreading it around the country that you can achieve closer to home. And then to go back to this, just on the bigger picture away from the academy stuff then, on and I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot over the next while. So from, say, that position 20 years ago when the FAI took over, and the only line ever that really stood from what John Delaney had to say was about the problem child, and we had that long period where the league wasn't in a great position. There was never-ending infighting, and they simply wouldn't be able to manage themselves. And then COVID hits, and the FAI's reputation has been in crisis since then, but also financially have been in utter crisis since then. And we've had this week the launch of the Women and Girls Plan, and I spoke to Hannah Dingley on Wednesday, and I pushed her on who's going to pay for this. She sort of spoke about we're going to empower certain people. She did when she spoke to the written media. There was a lot, which I'm surprised wasn't just the headline and will be the headline for months and months and months to come for the FAI. She said, we have no money.
Yes.
So we're having to come up with initiatives. And that's the problem the FAI now find themselves in, where they have no money to really take advantage of the most remarkable success story in Irish sport, which is the revival of the League of Ireland over the last 4 or 5 years. The league has put itself in a position where its brand has never been in a better state. The clubs have finally got their shit together. They've managed to get serious people in at the top of their organisations, whereby Bohemians and Shamrock Rovers can hate each other's guts, but their CEOs can meet and they can organise to get 35,000 people into the Aviva Stadium. They can realise there's a bigger picture. You add in, as you say, the various different Dublin clubs. All of these clubs are becoming more and more professional, and they're thinking, we've got a really good, strong brand, and actually the FAI brand is holding us back. Now, they're dead right in thinking all of those things, but actually putting into practice a breakaway, and the club's been able to run themselves. Do you feel, Gareth, right now the clubs would be able to stage that breakaway, and financially it would make sense for them to break away from the FAI?
No, and the reason I say that, the FAI, right, the League of Ireland brand is not associated with the FAI, really. I mean, the FAI do some good things when it comes to League of Ireland. Vinny's touched on a few of them there now, but what they don't do is they don't speak to them, they don't listen to them, and they don't deliver what they need to make themselves better. Everything that's happened good about the league in the last 5 years has been all to do with the volunteers and the people in each club. So why should the FAI be given the credit for it? But they have done certain things. Regulation, governance has all been good, but they're missing the final 2 or 3 things. Mark Scanlon, since he went in there, has done an incredible job. He's only been in there almost 2 years now. What he has done since he went down there has been far better than anything's been done in the last decade. So there's not much wrong. It's the FAI that are getting so much wrong when they start getting involved in academies and stuff like this. Instead of listening to the clubs and saying the clubs need financial support, go and get it for them and deliver it. Don't turn up and try and take away their best players from 17 to whatever age group. That's madness. That's someone that's not listening, and that's someone that hasn't listened. And the FAI haven't listened to the League of Ireland clubs enough. But breaking away now and letting them just kind of go off into the sun on their own, thinking that it would be okay, then you're just going to have more problems, because the governance and the has been good from the FAI. That's been the half decent part.
Yeah, the concern is the governance of clubs and clubs. But there would obviously need to be a sort of a central sort of almost business or whatever set up to run the league. But like the input that, for example, the PFAI have had over the last number of years is they've had a seat at the table. They've got standard players' contracts, for example. They're still not perfect, but they've got a lot of good work in. If the league clubs were technically running themselves, their voice is a lot less. And particularly in a league where players aren't brilliantly financially rewarded, there is some good cases where players are doing really well. You would need to be careful that the governance of that side of the game is monitored, and you would need, for example,
were both in the midst of it when the FAI took over, and Dublin City were just going bust, and Shells was obviously an absolute mess.
I nearly said, to be fair to Delaney, what I was going to say is, like, we did have the biggest, the economic crash came 2 years after that statement he made, and everything went the way it went, and clubs over the years have overspent, and are we in the middle of that again? I don't know. So we need. There is checks and balances that need to be done, and we need to. If we break away, we've got to take a lot of the learnings of the last 4 or 5 years into a new sort of regime. You would say it's really important.
Vinny, I'm not saying that it's never going to happen, but I'm saying you've got to get your ducks in order for it to happen. So you've got to get a clear team in place, a clear structure in place, and bring all the good things that the FAI done. But I mean, how difficult, how expensive will that be?
I think it's inevitable it will happen, Gareth. Because of the leadership within the biggest clubs, it's inevitable that the people at Rovers, Bows are going to make this happen. And Pats, for example, Derry, Sligo, a lot of top people, business people, I think it's inevitable to happen. It's just what that looks like. Whether, for example, does it almost like a 50-50 share with a certain section of the FAI? Something has to.
Yeah, and as I said, definitely I think while it might be inevitable, it's probably not imminent. And no. I suspect they're aware of what you're saying, Gareth, that this is going to be a process where they need to make sure everything's in place. And the one question you would have is in terms of that government funding, while the clubs are within their rights to send that letter to the FAI saying we want to see all of the correspondence, if you're in government and you're not paying as much detail to this as we are, all you're thinking is, football again, can't get their house in order, infighting. Why did we give them? Who are we giving the money to? The clubs or the FAI? Should they they can't get on?
Nathan, this is the problem, right? And it's a global problem. Recruitment. The FAI have not got a good enough recruitment and people in place. I talked about Mark Scanlon there. He's one, and I don't know how many people's in there. The rest of them aren't competent enough. That's just, and they've proven that. This isn't a now problem. They've proven that since they've gone in there. It's been awful. The marketing, the compliance, the communications, everything has been horrendous for the last while. And even the pathways, I mean, we can get into it now, but that's another slideshow, football pathways plan. That is just strategic plan, right? Fundamentally, when you're doing a business plan or strategic plan, you have got to look at your competition. And at no stage within that pathways plan does it mention the competition for young boys and girls all over this country. And it's pretty clear that the GAA and the RFU are miles ahead and have been for decades. So trying to put a plaster on a bleeding artery at 14, 15, 16, 17, it will not change unless you engage with the 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10-year-olds in this country and makes football their biggest love. And that's
one thing we learned, Nathan, sorry, is... And
by the way, sorry, I'm just going to finish now. Mark Canham has been told this as well, and he's done nothing about it.
Just on that, Gareth, Mark Canham would say that within that Pathways plan, they have identified the fact that for 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds outside of Dublin, outside of Cork, that there's very little football, that there's 25 weeks a year where you get football, and part of their plan from this strategy over the next 12 years is to implement that aligned calendar and open up those opportunities so that everybody in every part of the country plays the same amount of football from a very young age. Now, whether or not that is ever going to be seen through is a completely different matter.
Nathan, aligning the football will not engage and give more contact hours. It's the schools they need to get into. They need to get in the schools at that age. That's what their FU are doing, and that's what the GA are doing. Like, aligning the calendars is a small step on what needs to be done to get the 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds in love with football more so than RFU. And then that's not even talking about what their parents end up doing as well. So what happens is the 6 and 7, 8-year-olds that pick GA and RFU, or the rugby, then their parents end up getting into that sport and better in that sport, and we're left with the crumbs.
So I think, Nate, do you mind just saying, like, there is parts of the plan, the development plan, that a lot of people would be in favour. I would love summer football. I don't think, and I've argued, I've made the case on behalf of people almost, like, as in what I've heard from schoolboy clubs. So I think it's too easy to throw out the line of it's politics, or people are saying no for no reason. It's their experience. But one thing, Gareth has touched on the RFU and he's touched on the GAA, and that I think there's a more local element to them because of it's Irish sport and Irish sport only. I know there are RFU play international, don't get me wrong, but the development is within Ireland and within Ireland only. You're in the Leinster Academy, the Munster Academy, Ulster Connacht or whatever, and the club game is part of that building process. We're still, as an organisation, looking to the UK, and again, not to make it personal, when you consider how much power and influence that Packy Bonner has had, that's come to the fore over the last week or two, in terms of the two international managers speaking about how important he was in terms of the appointments. I don't believe Packy Bonner has the same belief in our league as he should have. That's the nicest way of putting it. I don't think he believes in the because of his upbringing, because he would probably, I'm not going to put words in my mouth, feel getting players to England is better. It is, but we don't have that solution, so we've got to fix our one. I think we need more of a local approach and somebody from the game here to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
So, look.
And again, you're talking almost about two different things there, because you're talking about that step in towards the elite side of it. You're talking about 6, 7, 8-year-olds, Gareth, where, you know, I see it myself, and I'm wary of the anecdotal evidence, but I have a 6-year-old daughter who started playing recently, and, you know, she's playing with the boys, and there's 2 or 3 girls, and we're sending around the class to see who wants to come and play, and there's not great interest. Yet I go down to the GEA Academy, and there's 60 girls down there. So the culture is that families want to get their kids at a young age into the GEA and are sort of looking at football and going, maybe.
Yeah. And that, some of that is down to lots of things. The facilities
is a huge part of it.
There's a huge part of it. Yeah. So that's where I know we're talking about the elite level, and you're saying you're talking about the younger age. I think both, they're all interlinked. The more darts we throw at developing players, the more likely to.
Me and Gareth are keeping it real. We're all about, you know, kids going out having fun. Vinny's all about the big bucks at the end of it. that's
tells you a lot about him.
To all of this, we got to leave it there. Listen, we'll come back because there's so much in this, and I know people are so interested and so invested in grassroots development and what these next steps are. And like this week feels like a week we might be coming back to for many years to come in terms of what the league does and what the league clubs do. But we do have
one last question then before we finish. Who's your favourites to win the league this week?
Today. So I said.
You said Pats.
I said Pats, but I said Rovers if they signed a striker, which they didn't do. But I actually now, ever since week 1, I'm going with Shells, and I still think Shells.
Okay, Gareth.
I'm gonna go with Pats.
Vinny's gonna say Pats because he's at Richmond Park tomorrow night, and he's afraid that he'd get cornered by somebody. So,
would you be worried if I had said Sligo?
Who are you going with?
I'm now thinking Rovers.
Okay.
Shell second.
Wow.
Ooh, Pat's third.
Well, that's what I said at the start of the year. Haven't changed my mind.
There we go. He's just trying to point out that he's not for moving. Good stuff, lads. We'll talk to you next week.
It's been emotional.
Thanks, man.
The LOI Pod on Off the Ball. Catch live and exclusive national radio commentary of the Men's League of Ireland Premier Division on Off the Ball all season.